Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Courageous Custody, your weekly dose of empowerment and practical guidance. I am Renee Rodriguez, the creator of the Custody Blueprint, divorce mediator, parenting coordinator.
Yes, and I'm Achana Tarfa, a level 3 trained internal family systems practitioner and co-founder of the Global Trauma Institute. And I'm so happy to be here with Renee again because we understand the unique challenges protective parents face in the courtroom. Our mission together is to equip you with strategic thinking and emotional support to help you navigate this difficult journey with strength and resilience.
So every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to go live on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, bringing you inspiration and insight from stories about courageous parents who have walked in your shoes and emerged victorious in big ways and small, and practical strategies from us to help you advocate for your children and manage your trauma as you go through your custody case. So let's dive in. Want to be sure everyone understands we're not giving legal advice or therapy.
No, and if you are feeling triggered, we want you to take care of yourself.
So today's topic is custodial interference, recognizing and responding to narcissistic tactics. I think custodial interference is, one of the biggest things that we have to contend with because, abusers, they couldn't be bothered with the children behind closed doors. They can't be, couldn't be bothered with them during the marriage. But the minute that a protective parent goes to court, boy, do they, they want their possessions now, right? And that's
Sure.
Commonly we hear from a lot of moms that it feels like these kids are possessions more than anything. And when it comes to abusive personalities, absolutely, I believe that is true. But, I think we need to start with what is custodial interference, right? So custodial interference happens when a parent disrupts or obstructs the other parent's court-ordered custody rights. And I think that's the furthest it goes. Also, if you have an agreement in writing, even email or text message, if you've got something in place and they're interfering with that, they're practicing a type of custodial interference. So it can be very subtle or it can be completely overt. So it can be making transitions difficult to completely refusing to comply with any agreements or orders or anything like that. Narcissistic parents often engage in manipulative tactics, which we know only too well, that appear reasonable on the surface, right? But instead, it's creating this sense of chronic instability and distress for both the child and the protective parent. And there are a lot of different tactics that they use for custodial interference. Let's start with weaponizing logistics, for example. We have chronic lateness, for example, or suddenly changing pickup or drop off times to exert control, or locations or anything like that. So when it comes to those exchanges and the parenting time, they really get in the way of that and create chaos. They can create emergencies. The child is sick, so they can't come today. Now, look, we've got a lot of protective parents, kind of like our kids really are sick. They really can't go over. You have to get the pediatrician, the doctor, the specialist to say, look, this child cannot be moved. Otherwise, I'm always recommending to our clients that if you can, you get them over to the other parent for parenting time, but ask the doctor, because the doctor will say whether or not the child can be moved. They'll also refuse to confirm plans until the very last minute, so that there's this constant state of uncertainty. I find this especially a bigger example of this is with travel. You won't get their itinerary until they're pretty much packing up the car, whereas the protective parent, as soon as they get their tickets, receipts, and itinerary emailed to them, they're entering it into the share calendar, right? Not so with the narcissist. And so everybody's left, again, chaos, right? And then there's just a lot of unilateral decision-making around scheduling, around doctor's appointments, around anything, unilaterally deciding that there's a dentist appointment that they then don't invite the other parent to at all, or inform them of, or wait until the last minute when they knew about it for a while. And they're basically violating court orders, but they'll use language like it's in the best interest of the child, right? Of course, another, sorry?
I said, oh, yeah.
I mean, it's constant. It really is, especially when it comes to them using that legal language to make it sound like they bring in the legal language. And we always tell our protective parents, don't do it. Don't say best interest of your child. Don't say custodial interference. We're talking about it now, but we just use regular language to talk about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another tactic that is used is undermining the other parent. This is where the abuser is telling the child that they don't have to go and see the protective parent if they don't want to, right? Why wouldn't a child want to go see their primary attachment figure, their primary caregiver, right? But they make it seem like, oh, well, you don't have to go if you don't want to. They're insinuating, it's manipulative. And they'll frame the protective parent's neglect for unsafe, which means that the child starts to resist transitions, of course. And they might even overindulge the child before handoffs to make the protective parent seem boring or overly strict. This is one of those types of things where we recognize all of these tactics as parental alienation, a term that is commonly used in court. And I think we see it all over the internet these days as well.
Yeah, everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah, and it's, we've talked so much about alienation. Check out, our social media to see the stuff that we've talked about there, because there's some great specifics that we've gone in with that. But another tactic that these abusers use for custodial interference is that they will use authorities. They will start to create sort of these legal, if there's any sort of legal loopholes, if there's any loophole they can find, if there's any error in your agreement, they will go in there and suck it out and take it for themselves, right? So they might, in using authorities, they might do things like filing false reports. Oh, let me call CPS on this person. Oh, let me send over for a wellness check. And that's disrupting the child's routine, and it's creating legal stress. And it's also having the child see the police showing up. Right. And so they'll claim fear for the child's well-being as an excuse to withhold visitation. Now, protective parents would very much like to withhold visitation. Who wants to send their children over to an abuser's household to be abused and neglected and suffer cruelty? Well, the other side, the abusers will do this, creating these fake excuses, and they will engage in the parental alienation, but they are basically trying to make themselves look like the reasonable parent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
when we take a look at how family court treats custodial interference, I think that they're fairly good about it, but when we have a coercive controller, when we have a narcissist and the lines get blurred, that's where the wool gets pulled over the court's eyes by the abuser, right? So that's when courts will fail to recognize the emotional abuse behind interference. We've talked quite a bit, in a lot of our episodes about how many court professionals are just not trained in coercive control or domestic violence, psychological trauma. So they're focusing on only the clear violations, which abusers do plenty of, and that I always recommend that our protective parents absolutely bring forward, right? Hold on to that evidence and organize it so that you can show the pattern. Narcissistic parents, they tend to exploit the legal system by framing interference as protecting the child. And that's where it gets really blurry. That's that alienation piece. They're basically taking what they know to be true about themselves, when you agree, and
Right.
that's what the other parent is doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. They weaponize that all the time. And the court and the legal system gives them the ability to create
100%.
this false narrative.
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to be the ones to call the other parent uncooperative, or using the words high conflict, right? If that protective parent says, look, you can't do this anymore, the minute that protective parent starts to use their voice to protect themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Documenting all of these things is critical. You want to have the clear evidence, and you can show patterns of emotional abuse. You can show also how the kids are being affected. The child therapist can speak to this as a witness, for example, to some of the things that are going on. We had somebody recently who was able to document how their co-parent was not inviting them to any of the doctor's appointments that they would place last minute. And these were the types of appointments that weren't even necessary in the first place. Right. So you do want to document all of these things.
I think that's so important, because we've talked about this a lot, Renee, when it comes to, these incidents being documented. without documenting them so we can sort of have perspective and see the pattern. They just look like random isolated incidents, right?
Yeah.
But when there's actual, this time, this is the occurrence before and after, and then you see that on a repeated basis, then it becomes a pattern of behavior that the court then kind of pays a different attention to. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and I think that what one of the things that we are coming across now is that I've heard many courts say, "Well, we don't want to know what's happened historically. We just want to know what's happening now."
No.
And I think whenever we do get a court professional who says that, it astounds me, because you have to know who these people are. And somebody who suddenly becomes wonderful during a court process under the court microscope, if that's all you're looking at, my God, you're pulling the wool over your own eyes. And so
Mm.
you need to show those patterns. And whenever I have a protective parent come to me and say they don't want to see the history, we actually always work with our clients to find a way to get that history in there in such a way that it doesn't look like it's marital discord that you're complaining about,
Mm.
or that you're complaining about something that you were angry about before, but rather how it's affecting the children, how it's custodial interference.
Yeah, absolutely. And there could be parts that are really activated about maybe that information. And the information I'm speaking to is, oh, we don't care about history. We care about what's happening now. And then it's so common that we hear, oh, all of a sudden, this person that has been absentee, I think we're going to talk about that as well at some point, but this person is now completely involved, wanting to be at all the parent teacher conferences, wanting to be a participant in these things. And you know that that's just for court, right? And protective moms and protective parents understand that. So there can be a lot of parts that come up about, the court saying those things. It's like, wait, don't you care about this custodial interference? Well, yes, I do, but I only care about why you say how does it show up now? And so through an IFS lens, we can really explore parts of us that are upset by that feel maybe an anger about that, or a fear that if a person doesn't see the history, that they're not going to have a full context. And those fears of those concerns of those parts are completely legit. They might want to try to, show up. Parts of us may want to try to show up and maybe, be prepared for that narrative or plan ahead if those outcomes are what we're dealing with to stay safe. And there are other parts, like I said, anger. And not that anger is a bad thing. Anger is a really healthy emotion. What's when we respond out of anger, when we freeze or we let anxiety, which is a mood of a bunch of complex emotions, show up that can cause exhaustion. And those parts can really interfere with the ability, with the protective parent's ability to manage what's in front of them and to get a hold of what's in front of them. So to really be aware, recognize, okay, what parts are showing up for me right now in this sort of chaotic environment? And what parts of me feel a sense of powerlessness? What parts of me are inside that maybe there were situations in the past that I wasn't able to control, but how can I show those parts now that although we might not be able to control everything, there are some things that we can control. There are some things that we can get a hold of and manage that. It's going to be really important to help yourself understand what's going on inside so that when interference does happen, these parts that rush in to protect us or to protect the protective parents can do so, but they can be self-led, right? Because if they just constantly are rushing in, and that's when burnout and emotional dysregulation or ineffective communication with the court can occur. And then those instances are then weaponized against the protective parent. So being able to just sort of have an idea, okay, these are the parts that show up when this custodial interference occurs. How then can I map that? And again, that goes to our last episode with having that support externally can influence how you can support yourselves internally as well.
Yeah, and there are, of course, legal and practical strategies to to
Mhm.
deal with this in court. I mean, again, the main thing is going to be that you document everything. I'm a big fan of, we created at the Custody Blueprint the visitation log, right? So with the visitation log, there's a very particular set of things that we are asking our protective parents to be noting, because that's the stuff that's going to matter when they go to put together their case. That's the stuff that is going to be relevant versus all the other stuff that many parents keep. Sometimes with journaling, some parents choose to journal, and that's okay. But some sort of a visitation log is highly recommended. And you're really trying to look at those missed visits, at the changed visits, changed times, and all of the various many manipulations. I'm sure people are commenting like crazy on, here's how I was manipulated during custodial interference, right? This
Mm.
is what custodial interference looks like with my co-parent. But it's also very helpful, we are finding, to use the court-approved communication apps like our Family Wizard, like Talking Parents, even like App Close, which most people don't like, but it is free. But at least there can be a chance to prevent the gaslighting, because you have a history. You can say, per the message I sent via OFW on August 14th, that's not what we agreed on. You were supposed to drop off by now, right? And then, of course, if worst comes to worst, you can always seek enforcement by asking your lawyer to file a motion, right? You talk about all the parts we have to map out and take care of. You need that emotional stability. And sometimes that does mean that you need to pull the authorities in, as expensive as it may be. Remember, if you let certain things go on too long without at least talking about it over our Family Wizard, sometimes that creates a status quo, and the courts can look at your not saying anything and not doing anything about it as implicit agreement to a new status quo.
Mm.
So you do have to be aware of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That pausing to have a response instead of a reaction, that building that supportive network internally and externally, and really setting these firm boundaries, because the narcissistic co-parent may provoke, or not may, chances are likely will provoke. So to be able to stay grounded and in your truth is really, really important. And understanding, there's a bigger picture here, right? We're protecting the child's emotional well-being, because children are often caught in the middle of power struggles and can experience within themselves, whether the protective parent or their abusive parent are doing this or not. A child naturally wants to be loyal to both parents, and so they could have sort of a conflict within themselves. And when the court system, even when the court system fails, being that steady presence and being that emotionally regulated parent really goes a long way in providing safety for the child, because you're a co-regulated source. And that's how children learn how to self-regulate. They learn it through co-regulation. So teaching children how to be resilient and having emotional intelligence helps them see through, this sense of loneliness or the sense of conflict internally, because they know, okay, this parent is a safe parent, and I can express how I'm feeling and know that this parent is somebody who I can rely on to be the one that holds space for me. Not to say that children know the term holding space, but you get what I'm saying. They understand how to self-regulate through co-regulation with the mom, in our cases with mothers. So, custodial interference is really designed to break the protective parent's resolve. But that fight does not have to happen alone. So when you have a sense of the bigger picture, when you have a sense of the legal team and the supportive team and the experts and self-leadership, obviously within yourself, community support, those challenges can be navigated while still staying connected to yourself and to your child. So I think
Well,
that's
yeah,
go
that's it
ahead.
for this week's episode of Courageous Custody. But before we go, thank you so much for joining us, whether live or on replay. We're so grateful to have helped in any way that we may have. We do have some great takeaways for this week. Document everything. We say it so much, we're saying it again. Recognize your parts and protect your children's emotional well-being, even as they are being pulled in the direction of the abuser.
Yeah. Next week, join us again, 7 p.m. Eastern here. Like or follow or bookmark us so that you can get notifications and not miss anything, because what we're talking about might catch you right when you need this information. Yeah.
And leave your own comments below. We know that there is a lot of custodial interference going on for everybody. Talk about it so people don't feel alone. Wherever you're listening, remember, you are not alone. Until next week, stay strong, stay informed. Happy St. Patty's Day. We forgot to say it, whether you're celebrating it for fun or for your culture. Have a good time. And remember, keep fighting for what matters most.
Bye,
Bye-bye, everyone.